But here's the thing that the No campaign have not been telling you. They've been trying to say recently that oil is pretty much the only natural resource that we have, and all of our hopes and dreams of independence are based on it, and when it runs out, we're in real trouble. They seem to be overlooking the fact that despite only having 8.3% of the population of the UK, we currently have 32% of the land area, 61% of the sea area, and 90% of the surface freshwater. Oh, and also, 65% of North Sea natural gas, 96% of North Sea crude oil, 47% of coal production, 81% of coal reserves not yet being worked, 62% of timber production, 46% of the total forest area, 60% of the fish landings from Scottish vessels, 55% of total UK fish landings from Scottish waters, 30% of the beef, 20% of the sheep, 9% of the dairy, 10% of the pigs, 15% of the cereal holdings, and 20% of the potatoes. Not bad for only 8.3% of the population. So in terms of resources, we're doing pretty well. Not to mention that despite making up only 1% of the population of Europe, we have 25% of Europe's tidal energy potential, 25% of Europe's offshore wind potential, and 10% of Europe's wave potential. Before even looking at our world-leading life sciences industry, our tourism industry, and whiskey, it's clear we are a resource-rich nation. This week on Project Fear, the ongoing campaign to keep you scared of independence, we find out that all yes voters are violent psychopaths. Jim Murphy, Labour MP, was out campaigning for the Union earlier this week when he was hit by an egg and heckled by some folk in the street. What has come from it has been an onslaught of accusations that Yes Scotland are somehow organising violent mobs of yes voters to shout down undecided voters and cause intimidation. But there is another side to this story. This week also, a registered No campaigner kicked a yes voting woman in the stomach before being arrested. But you probably didn't hear about it. But surely you heard about the guy who chased Alex Salmond's car while waving a no sign, or maybe the yes shop in Edinburgh that had excrement smeared over it. You may have missed the death threats to Jim Sillars and Alex Salmond too, because they've got nothing even close to the coverage and attention that Jim Murphy being hit with an egg got. Violence has no part in this campaign. To all yes and no voters, this is and has been always a democratic process. In the coming weeks, we're going to start to really see the smear hitting the fan, and only by remaining calm and rational will we continue to win the argument. I understand the frustration. Jim Murphy has been touring Scotland telling everyone that we're better together, speaking to people in some of the areas hit hardest by Westminster's austerity. And when folk find out that Murphy has claimed over £1 million in expenses since 2001, or that the Labour Party, who he is a representative of and who are meant to represent the working class, voted overwhelmingly for the benefit cap, I get why people become frustrated and angry, but that is not going to help right now. Ignore Jim. Ignore Nigel Farage when he comes up to visit Scotland a few days before the vote. Ignore the massive Orange Order march in Edinburgh. Violence and counter-protests are not the answer. And now on to the final section, it's the fact of the day. Over the last 30 years as part of the UK, Scotland's economy has doubled in size. And in that same amount of time, poverty has doubled as well. Almost 1/5 of the population in Scotland are living in inadequate housing. The BBC published recently that malnutrition has become a UK-wide issue as food prices have risen by 12% since 2007, while wages in the UK have fallen 7.6% in the same time. If our economy has grown so much, why doesn't it feel like it? These are areas of child poverty in Glasgow and Edinburgh. The red zones are areas where up to 83% of children in Glasgow and 67% of children in Edinburgh are living in poverty. Glasgow has the lowest life expectancy in the whole of the UK. Not unsurprisingly, the areas with the highest life expectancy were generally in the south of the UK. The surveys conducted in working class areas of Scotland, carried out by the Radical Independence Campaign, showed that there is already a majority of yes support in areas being hit with poverty. The surveys included over 18,000 voters in 90 different areas, showing 63% are in favour of independence with undecideds removed. These areas are shouting for help, and as part of the UK, we can't give it to them. In 2003, Scotland published legislation called the Homelessness Scotland Act, which was held up by the United Nations as exemplary and best practice, with them even going as far as saying that it should be adopted by the rest of the UK. It is one of many progressive policies that Scotland has put forward that will always be held back by policy from Westminster, such as welfare reform that the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations has warned will lead to an increase in homelessness despite the legislation Scotland has in place. And despite our poverty, a recent poll showed that 56% of English voters want Scotland's budget cut in the event of a no vote, even though we raise on average more tax per head of population than the rest of the UK. Priti Patel, a member of the UK Treasury, has said that Scotland's budget should be cut. If Westminster want to cut Scotland's spending even further than what we will see under their austerity, they have the backing of the Parliament and the people of England. So don't think for a second that they will hesitate to do it. Still think we're better together? That's everything from this week's IndieRef Weekly Review. Links to everything we've spoken about are below. Mary and Brett will be with you on Thursday morning with the IndieRef Midweekly Review. Please do share, like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at StephenPayton134, and remember, don't hate the media, become the media.